97.5 KMOD, Smokehouse Blues, Sunday night special edition as we celebrate the life of John Henry, Rockin' John Henry. Friends and family here. We're going to try to get to each and every one of them before the evening's over if we can, and get to some of your phone calls at 460-KMOD. Is the toll-free number working? Do we know? Is Clark around? We'll give it out. What is it? 1-866-POP-NOT?
You got it.
Yeah, 1-866-POP-NOT. You might be able to get on that line. John Wooley from the Tulsa World Entertainment Writers joined us here this evening. John, thanks for being here.
You're welcome, Phil. Glad to be here.
Very nice article you wrote in the paper about John.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks, Brent. It's one of the things I'm finding out, and you guys have found it out, I'm sure, is I knew John was a friend of mine for a couple of decades, and but you never really know what kind of impact he had until you start hearing from people. And everybody, it's unusual with him because a lot of times when someone passes away that has had an important role in their lives, they'll call up and say, I'm really sorry that he died. They want to tell stories. Mm-hmm. They call up and they want to tell you stories about John Henry, and they want to tell you stories about the stories that John Henry told them or they heard from John Henry. There's emails, there's phone calls. I could spend the next week answering emails and phone calls about John Henry. And the great thing about him, I think, was that he always kept the sense of wonder. You know how easy that is? He was like a kid.
You're right.
In the best possible way. He was always capable of being odd, A-W-E-D, odd.
Right. And O-double-D.
And O-double-D was the other one, yeah. That's why I wanted to spell that, Brent.
Yeah. Both ways works, Terry.
But, and the thing about it was he'd been in the business for years and years. To use a Wizard of Oz analogy, he'd seen the man behind the curtain a lot of times.
Absolutely.
But still, it didn't stop him from being so overwhelmed and so excited about things. One of the things that I talked about in the story I wrote after he passed was about Chuck Berry. And I had been talking to him when Chuck Berry came to town. I think it was in the early 90s. And I'd been talking about Chuck Berry, and of course was one of John's biggest heroes.
Oh, sure.
And John was going to get on stage with him, and Chuck Berry had a dictum that no other guitarist would be on stage. And so he had some of the Bobcats up there, but John couldn't be up there because there could be no other guitarists. So John was telling me before the show, he says, man, I just don't know. And it had him knotted up. I mean, he was really upset that he couldn't get on stage with Chuck Berry. This was an at-bat that John Henry had to take, and he was going to figure it out. So I was in the audience that night writing a review for the World, and I wondered if John Henry was going to do it. And I saw him sort of lurking around backstage, and his head would poke up from behind the stage, and he'd be watching Chuck Berry duck walking, and finally Chuck Berry gets up there for his final. I think he's doing Go Johnny Go or something at the end, and he starts hitting it, and all of a sudden, I don't know how he got on stage. It's like he materialized next to the drummer. And he had a drumstick, and he's just sitting there looking like he's maybe hoping that no one sees him, and he's hitting the cymbal behind Chuck Berry, just rhythmically, and just has this kind of beatific look on his face, and David Riley's sitting there drumming along, and here's John, just metronome with that. And, he had to be there, and that's the kind of, we all get cynical.
He just loved it. I mean, he couldn't have loved that more if he'd have taken a 16-bar solo and just tore it up.
Exactly, and we all get cynical in this business. Because we see the other side of it. And he saw the other side of it and remained one of the most uncynical people I've ever met.
You're absolutely right about that. No doubt about it.
That's what I want to say about John, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to do it.
John Wooley, thank
you so much for being here.